The house was never supposed to feel this empty. Ryan Harper stood frozen in the dimly lit entryway, gripping the keys his father had left him. The air smelled of dust and aged wood, yet beneath it lingered something more profound: memories. He could still hear his father's voice echoing in the silence, the warmth of his laughter filling the kitchen on Sunday mornings, the gruff yet affectionate way he'd say, "This house will always be home, son." But now it was just Ryan, alone. His fingers tightened around the keys as a lump formed in his throat. He had never expected to inherit this house, never imagined that he'd be standing here without his father's familiar presence to welcome him back. The loss still clung to his chest, a suffocating weight. And then, before he could even step further inside, the peace of the moment shattered. A voice, sharp and accusing, cut through the air. "You have no right to be here." Ryan spun toward the doorway, his heart pounding. A woman stood there, arms crossed, her perfectly styled blonde bob swaying as she tilted her head with a smirk of certainty. She was dressed like she was ready for an HOA meeting. Pearls, a pressed blazer, the whole package. But her narrowed eyes weren't those of a friendly neighbor. "Excuse me?" Ryan's voice came out steadier than he felt. "I know exactly what you're doing," she said, stepping closer, squatting, trying to move into someone else's home. "I've seen people like you before." Ryan's grip on his keys tightened. "This is my house," he said slowly, his patience already wearing thin. "I inherited it from my father." The woman scoffed. "Nice try. The real owner isn't here, and I won't let you just waltz in and claim it. I know who lives here." Ryan's jaw clenched. His father had mentioned a neighbor named Linda, a woman who always had her nose in everyone's business. But he had never expected this level of hostility. He took a slow breath. "I am the real owner. My father left this house to me in his will." Linda's expression twisted into something condescending. "People will say anything to get free real estate." Then, to his utter disbelief, she pulled out her phone. Ryan's stomach sank as she dialed. "Hello? Yes, I'd like to report a trespasser. There's a man breaking into my neighbor's home. He's refusing to leave." Ryan's pulse roared in his ears. Was this actually happening? Love seeing entitled people get what they deserve. Subscribe for more crazy stories like this. The disbelief boiled into something sharper: anger. He wasn't some criminal trying to sneak into a stranger's house. He was standing in his own home, and this woman, this stranger, had just called the cops on him like he was nothing more than a thief. He stepped forward, forcing himself to remain calm. "Linda, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she snapped, lifting a finger to silence him. "I knew this would happen the moment Harold passed away. People like you, waiting for an opportunity to take advantage. I won't let you." Ryan exhaled slowly, trying to keep his composure. "Check the county records. My name is on the deed." Linda smirked. "Oh, I will. But until then, the police will handle it." Ryan clenched his fists. He could walk away. He could wait for the police. Show them the will, the deed, everything proving that this was legally his. But the fact that he even had to was infuriating. Minutes later, the sound of approaching sirens filled the quiet street. Ryan let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. His first night in his father's house, the home where he'd grown up, and he was already being treated like a criminal. As the red and blue lights flashed through the windows, he muttered under his breath, "Welcome home, I guess." The flashing red and blue lights cast eerie shadows across the porch as the sheriff's cruiser pulled up. Ryan's heart pounded with frustration, but he forced himself to stay calm. He knew how this looked. An unfamiliar man standing at the door of a house that some well-dressed neighbor claimed he had no right to be in. He had never been in trouble with the law before, but something told him that Linda was the kind of person who thrived on making problems where there weren't any. The driver's side door opened, and out stepped Sheriff Tom Grayson, a man Ryan vaguely remembered from his childhood. He had been younger back then, less gray in his beard, but his expression remained the same, stern but fair. His boots crunched on the gravel driveway as he approached, one hand resting near his belt. "What seems to be the problem here?" Grayson asked, his gaze flicking between Ryan and Linda. Linda took a step forward, her face twisted into an expression of righteous indignation. "Thank God you're here, Sheriff. I caught this man trying to break into Harold Montgomery's home. He refused to leave, and I was terrified for my safety." Ryan's jaw clenched. Terrified? She had practically bulldozed her way onto his property, and now she was playing the victim? Grayson let out a slow sigh, clearly already tired of this nonsense. "Linda, slow down. You said Harold Montgomery's house." Linda nodded emphatically. "Yes, and I happen to know that Harold didn't have any family living here. This man is obviously lying, and I will not stand by while some scammer tries to take advantage of the situation." Ryan took a step forward, keeping his hands where the sheriff could see them. "Sheriff, my name is Ryan Harper. Harold was my father." He pulled his wallet from his pocket and handed over his ID. "I just drove in from Portland to settle things. I have the will, the deed, everything. I own this house." Grayson glanced over the ID, then looked Ryan up and down as if trying to connect the man before him with the memory of a kid he probably hadn't seen in years. Something seemed to click because his expression softened slightly. "You're Harold's boy." Ryan nodded. "Yeah, I know it's been a long time since I've been back, but I have every right to be here." Linda huffed, crossing her arms. "Oh, come on, Sheriff. He could have faked all of that. How do you even know this isn't some elaborate scam?" Grayson shot her a look. "Because I knew Harold, Linda. And I remember when he used to bring Ryan into town as a kid." He turned back to Ryan, handing his ID back. "You got the will and deed on you." Ryan exhaled in relief, then quickly pulled the folded documents from his jacket pocket and handed them over. Grayson unfolded them, scanning through the paperwork under the glow of his flashlight. After a long moment, he let out a grunt and nodded. "Well, looks legit to me," he said, glancing toward Linda. "This house is his, and unless you've got some actual legal reason to dispute that, I suggest you head on home." Linda's face turned bright red, but she wasn't done. "Sheriff, I know Harold, and I know he wouldn't have just given his house away to some son who never visited. I was close to him. I checked on him when no one else did. This isn't right." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "So that's what this is about." She hadn't called the police because she thought he was a criminal. She called them because she wanted this house, because she thought she was entitled to it. "Maybe you checked in on him, but that doesn't change the fact that he left this house to me," Ryan said, folding his arms. "If he wanted you to have it, he would have put your name on the will." Linda's lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't over." Sheriff Grayson let out another long sigh, clearly regretting ever stepping out of his cruiser. "It is over, as far as I'm concerned. Linda, if you cause trouble again, we'll have another conversation, and I guarantee you won't like it." She shot Ryan a glare sharp enough to cut steel, then spun on her heel and stormed off down the driveway. The taillights of her car disappeared into the night, but Ryan knew this wasn't the last he'd see of her. Grayson folded the documents and handed them back. "You planning on staying here long?" Ryan hesitated, looking back at the house. He still wasn't sure. This place held memories, some good, some painful. His father had been a hard man, not one for long talks or deep conversations, but this was his legacy. It was the last piece of him that remained. "For now," he said finally, "at least until I figure things out." Grayson nodded. "Well, welcome back to town. And if Linda gives you any more grief, call me." Ryan let out a short, dry laugh. "I have a feeling I might have to." As the sheriff drove off, Ryan stood alone on the porch, looking out at the darkened fields stretching beyond the house. The land was silent, but his mind was anything but. Linda wasn't going to stop. That much was clear. And something told him this fight was just beginning. The next morning, Ryan woke to the sound of something clattering against the front porch. He bolted upright in bed, his pulse spiking. For a split second, his groggy mind thought it might be another dream. Flashes of his father's voice, of standing on this land as a kid. But when another loud thunk echoed from outside, he knew this was real. Throwing on a hoodie, he strode to the front door, his breath fogging in the crisp morning air. His stomach twisted as he took in the sight before him. Garbage. Bags of it. Torn open. Spilling rotten food, crumpled paper, and broken glass all across the porch steps. The smell was immediate, sour, rancid. And right in the middle of the mess sat a note. This town doesn't belong to strangers. Leave. Ryan clenched his jaw so hard it hurt. He didn't need to guess who was behind this. Linda had made her intentions crystal clear last night, and now she had escalated. Taking a slow breath, he forced himself to think rationally. She wanted a reaction. She wanted him to snap, to run straight into town screaming about it, so she could play the innocent victim when the story got back to her HOA friends. Not happening. Instead, he grabbed a pair of gloves from the hallway closet and spent the next half hour cleaning it all up. The anger simmering beneath his skin didn't fade, but at least he had something to focus on. By the time the last of the mess was gone, his plan was forming. If Linda wanted to make this personal, she was about to find out that he didn't scare easily. By midday, Ryan was in town, parked outside the county records office. If Linda thought she could intimidate him into leaving, she clearly didn't know who she was dealing with. The office was small, with the scent of old paper and stale coffee lingering in the air. A middle-aged clerk with reading glasses perched on her nose looked up as he stepped inside. "Can I help you?" Ryan nodded. "Yeah, I need to pull up some property records. Specifically, any claims or liens that might have been placed on the Montgomery estate." The clerk frowned. "Your name?" "Ryan Harper." "Harold Montgomery was my father." Her expression softened slightly. "Ah, Harold was a good man. Sorry for your loss." Ryan offered a tight smile. "Thanks. Just trying to make sure everything's in order. I had a run-in with someone who seems to think they have a right to the place." The woman sighed, shaking her head. "Let me guess. Linda?" Ryan blinked. "That obvious?" She scoffed. "Han, that woman thinks she runs this town. Always has. Wouldn't surprise me if she's trying to pull something shady." She motioned toward a side desk. "Take a seat. I'll get those records for you." As Ryan waited, his mind raced. What if there was some loophole Linda was trying to exploit? But when the clerk returned, handing over a thick folder, her expression told him everything he needed to know. "There's nothing," she said simply. "No claims, no disputes. Your father left the house and land entirely to you." Relief flooded through Ryan, but it was quickly replaced by something sharper: determination. Linda had no legal leg to stand on. She had nothing. And now it was time to make that perfectly clear. Ryan didn't go home right away. Instead, he made one more stop, Sheriff Grayson's office. The older man looked up from his desk as Ryan walked in, eyebrow raised. "That was fast. You already need my help again." Ryan dropped the folder onto his desk. "Not yet, but I'm giving you a heads up." Grayson flipped through the pages, scanning them quickly before looking back up. "What am I looking at?" "Proof that Linda has zero legal claim to my house," Ryan said. "And I want it on record that she's already started harassing me. She dumped trash on my porch this morning." Grayson exhaled sharply, leaning back in his chair. "Not surprising. She's been pulling stuff like this for years. Just never with anyone who fought back." "Well, she picked the wrong person," Ryan said flatly. "She wants to intimidate me, fine. But if she escalates, I want a paper trail." Grayson nodded. Smart move. He tapped a pen against the folder, then met Ryan's gaze. "I'll talk to her. Can't promise she'll back down, but she'll know we're watching." Ryan let out a slow breath. That was enough for now, because Linda wasn't going to stop until she was forced to, and he was more than ready for that fight. Ryan didn't have to wait long for Linda's next move. The following evening, as he sat on the porch drinking a beer, headlights flared across the front yard. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop in the driveway, its tires crunching over the gravel. Linda stepped out, her expression smug, her arms folded like she was about to deliver a final, crushing blow. But she wasn't alone this time. A man in a tailored suit followed her, adjusting his tie as he eyed Ryan with the cold calculation of a lawyer preparing for battle. Ryan exhaled slowly, setting his bottle down. "Here we go, Mr. Harper," the lawyer began, his tone as smooth as silk. "I'm Stephen Wells, representing Ms. Linda Spencer. My client has reason to believe she is entitled to a claim on this property, given her close relationship with your late father." Ryan didn't even flinch. He leaned back against the railing, arms crossed, and smirked. "That right?" Linda lifted her chin. "Harold and I were together for years," she said, her voice dripping with forced emotion. "We had plans, Ryan. He promised me this house." Ryan nodded slowly, as if considering her words. "And yet, when it came time to put things in writing, he left everything to me. Must have slipped his mind, huh?" Linda's lips pressed into a thin line, but Wells took over, stepping forward. "A verbal agreement, especially one between intimate partners, can still be legally enforceable under certain circumstances. If Harold promised Miss Spencer this property, then we have grounds to contest the will." Ryan let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "That's a cute argument, but let's be real here. You don't have a case. I pulled the property records today. There's nothing backing up her claim." Wells didn't blink, but Ryan could tell he didn't like hearing that. "That doesn't mean a court wouldn't take her claims seriously." Ryan met his gaze, his smirk widening. "Right. And a court wouldn't take it seriously when I countersue for harassment? Because, trust me, Sheriff Grayson already knows all about Linda's little intimidation tactics." Linda's expression faltered, her confidence slipping for just a second. Ryan saw it, and he pushed harder. "I'm sure a judge would love to hear how she called the cops on the actual owner of the house, dumped trash on my porch, and is now trying to strong-arm me into giving up my own inheritance." He let the words hang in the air before adding, "Not a great look, huh?" Wells shifted uncomfortably, clearly reevaluating his position. Linda, however, wasn't ready to back down. "You don't belong here," she spat, her mask of civility crumbling. "You abandoned this place. You abandoned him." That one hit deep. For a second, Ryan felt a pang of guilt, a memory of missed calls, of holidays spent anywhere but here, of his father living out his last years alone. But grief wasn't a weapon she could use against him. He met her glare, his voice steady. "Maybe I wasn't here as much as I should have been, but that was between me and my father. Not you." Linda's jaw clenched. "You're just going to let his legacy rot? You don't know the first thing about keeping up this land." Ryan took a slow breath, then stepped down from the porch, closing the distance between them. "You don't know what I'll do with it," he said, voice calm but firm. "But I know one thing, I'm not selling. I'm not leaving. And I sure as hell am not giving it to you." Linda's hands curled into fists. She turned to Wells, her voice shrill. "Do something." But Wells had already made his decision. Adjusting his tie, he let out a sigh and turned to Ryan. "It seems we may have jumped the gun on this claim. We'll take another look at the legal standing before moving forward." Ryan smirked. "Yeah, you do that?" Linda's face burned red, and for a second, Ryan thought she might scream. Instead, she gave him one last glare, spun on her heel, and marched back to her SUV. As the car roared to life and sped off down the driveway, Ryan finally let out the breath he'd been holding. It wasn't over. Not completely. But he had won this round. And no matter what Linda tried next, one thing was certain. This house, his father's house, was his. And he wasn't going anywhere.